Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the very first game of this extended 4-week Offworld Trading Company team tournament. We're going to have Poor Sheep, AndreasG, Tenny, and Pavlos competing for our very first match, and of course, Philathenic here with us, also providing some commentary. So welcome to everyone.
Yes, so this map, Morgan said it was going to be all HQs, so we do have all 6 available. I'm noticing this really great nomad spot just to the right of the colony, New Amsterdam, found on that silicon right there. There is some carbon right to the north, so scavenger could be in play. The steel's all the way up on the top left, which is kind of awkward. And Andreas is going to take that nomad spot first.
Yeah, he likes the nomad spot, but he was taking a very long time to get that second HQ down. Finally, he's decided on it, and I don't think I actually like the second location all that much. It's going to be okay. I mean, he's got adjacent aluminum, but all he's really got there is a little bit more silicon, and there's really no other advantage besides that high aluminum. I would have liked to see him take one of the more valuable high aluminums, cut that off from other players who might want to compete with it, and maybe be a little bit closer to that carbon in the southern end in particular.
Right, yeah, normally when you found Nomad, you want one next to that silicon, and then one next to aluminum water is usually a good combo.
Yeah. He had the water already this time.
He did have the water, so just moving on to some sort of aluminum would be nice. I'm not sure where.
Yeah, I would have liked the aluminum carbon in particular. I mean, he's got aluminum.
Yeah, he does have a high. So it's not the worst.
But maybe could have been slightly better. Either way, he's up to HQ2 first. We also have a couple of expansives coming down, as you commented. This iron in our northwest corner is pretty odd, and you can see that's being difficult for Pavlos, who was having difficulty keeping a steel mill online and profitable. And then, of course, our scavenger right toward the middle of the map. He's got long shipping distances, so a bit of a slow start for him.
I would rather see him found closer to that crater, because the water next to the colony is very close by. You just need to beat the expansion to it. You should get up to HQ2 and claim that high water right next to the habitat modules, and that later can even be moved into a pleasure dome or something.
Yeah, pleasure dome. Even I would have actually very heavily considered going into the water in that laboratory spot. There's already 3 labs adjacent to it. You can grab that water and just plan on, all right, I'm going for a patent lab this game. There were some interesting options there. It would have been kind of nice to see players exploit that a little bit more.
Yeah, right now Poor Sheep is using 1.4 fuel a second, and that's all from shipping.
Yeah, I mean, these electrolysis reactors are not going to be profitable for him at all because of it. That's my biggest concern, is this is what he's trying to make money off of. And all it's going to do really is keep him from getting too much debt. Still going to be a little more difficult than he would like to use that black market to get through the upgrades. If he didn't have all that shipping cost for these reactors, they'd be great. But with it, I don't know how this is going to work out for him.
Yeah. Well,
third reactor is a start.
That's not good. AndreasG first to HQ3, which is what you kind of expect with a Nomad. They are essentially faster scavengers when you have low electronics, which is the case on this map. Moving into some chemical refineries and some farms just in time for a dust storm, so that'll have the farm production.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about these farms, partially because the dust storm, the dust storm was on the way well before he started these farms. You are notified of that, so that's just missing the little notification that the dust storm is coming. Always something to watch for if you want to move into farms. Also, there are EMPs to this game. It would have been pretty easy to go ahead and set these farms over on top of the silicon next to his other HQ, spread them out a little bit, be a little black market resistant. Always important when you're the Nomad and you've got that big number next to your name that people are scared of. You want to be resistant to that black market. Just a little bit of a poor selection from AndreasG. That's going to give everybody else a chance to catch up this game.
Yeah. Poor Sheep is the next to HQ3, moving into some wind turbines. Up on the cliff, power is creeping up there, so going for 3 wind turbines. Nobody else is in power, so right now that's okay. Could be an issue long term.
Yeah, I like it. I think there are extra claims on the market for one thing. So when there are extra claims on the market, usually as a scavenger, you have to be a little stingy about your claims, very, very careful about how you're using them. When there are extra claims available, oftentimes you can pick up many of those if you can find a way to make some money on the map. And so Poor Sheep probably going to need to be looking to do that if he's going to commit all 3 of these to
pick
power.
Up 2. So let's move over to our expansives who will also hit HQ3. We do have some long-distance shipping going on from both expansives. Water for Tinny, and then some iron, carbon, a little bit of everything for Pavlos. Pavlos shipping all over the place.
Yeah, just lots of different shipping going on there. Fights over the wind turbines. Not going to get too much done for the time being. Poor Sheep is quite effectively paying down his debt, by the way. 352 a second right now. And this might let him get to HQ level 4 before anybody else.
Almost.
Oh, almost. Very, very close. Still, not a bad spot to be in. Unfortunately, dust storm on the way. That's just going to make food ridiculous this game. All these dust storms keep coming in.
And those wind turbines are proving to be a very good investment for poor Sheep. Power's still at 55, falling slightly as we do have Pavlos moving into a pair of wind turbines. Other than that, there is no power production.
AndreasG's got that geothermal online. He's heading into a
there
second as well. Mutinies are available for those, which could be interesting, but there's no dynamite ready. There's no power surge. There's no circuit overload. The geotherm actually more difficult to attack, I would say, in this game, more annoying to attack than in most games. So I actually kind of like the geotherm option.
Tinny moves into our first pleasure dome, or Tinny, so we can actually pronounce their name. 254
is available for auction.
I like it. I like the pleasure dome selection. The location is just fine, I think, as well. The game did decide that somebody was going to be taking that patent lab location in this game. 208 on the chems, and of course with laboratories available, that always makes chems kind of expensive. I'm wondering if somebody is going to try and move away from this food once the dust storm comes in 1 second. Try to get into some chemicals, although honestly most of the food has just been EMP'd at this point.
Yeah, yep. Andreas, nobody has any food online.
Kind of amusing with the dust storm here. On the other hand, even through the dust storm, if these were online, they'd be making 88, 89 a second. That is not a bad tile, just because food has gone so ridiculously expensive this game.
Tinny has caught up to HQ4. Going for some more remote claims. Going into some power just as power is dying. Some wind turbines.
Power not a fantastic option for Tinny, unfortunately, and that is a lot of wind turbines to be putting down. Carbon up at 71 a piece right now. On the other hand, I'm not seeing a lot of other options when it comes to power. It doesn't look like you really want to go for silicon. There's no good access to that from the expansive location. Things are just a little weird this game, to say the least, for our expansive players.
They are just a little bit weird, but okay, so I do understand the reason wanting to go into power because you're in the C debt, as Tinny is right now. But they're only making 40, 37, 32 on that power.
And they're only paying down that much debt. If you want to do that, just make some glass, sell all that down, and hit the pay debt button. It's much better at that point, quite frankly.
Glass, or even move into some more iron. Iron's decently expensive right now. You have a high next to you that you could connect to your base and get some adjacency later on.
Center is ready.
Lots of different options that would be better than going into power.
Absolutely would. I do think Pavlos should be making a decent amount of money on this iron. Yeah, if he sold it down, it'd be starting to get a little bit cheaper. He's at +3 right now, but he's doing just fine. Might even like to have seen a little more steel production out of Pavlos if he was going to go into the double high irons. Steel's been very expensive this whole time, and one extra steel mill can make quite a bit of difference when it comes to how profitable all of that is. Lots of patent labs down, but only carbon scrubbing picked up so far from AndreasG. And his patent lab is once again silent, even with its massive adjacency bonus.
Yeah, that's just a little bit of a mistake right there by Andreas. I think he is moving into some chemical refineries to support that patent production, so we should see, I assume, a few more patents from Andreas. The expensive patents are 18k, the cheapest are 8.9, so they're definitely not cheap.
Not cheap patents, no, not at all. But we knew that was going to be happening going into it with all these laboratories, so not a big surprise. What I really don't like from AndreasG, and I do like from Pavlos right now, is this prioritization of teleportation this game. Teleportation feels so crucial this game for everybody, even if you're not benefiting from it in a big way, which we can see AndreasG really wouldn't be benefiting from it in a huge way. He did try, it looks like, to set up a kind of pseudo monopoly on aluminum, take up a lot of the aluminum spots. Trying to make an effort of that. That's where his teleportation would actually benefit him. But more importantly, perhaps, is these expansive players, even with their bonus to the ship's speed, are still doing an awful lot of shipping. You could make a very difficult market out of fuel for them if you take teleportation away. But with one of them picking it up, suddenly fuel just becomes a lot less interesting. It just leaves fewer options open for you to play with the hacker array, try and get a kill in as the Nomad in particular. Because you really need to get that done as the Nomad. Otherwise, these expansives are just going to overpower you in the late game.
Right, both for the Nomad and for the Scavenger, both have that late game fall off. Quickly take a look at the Roboclaims purchased 3 for Poor Sheep, 2 for Pavlos, and 1 for the rest of the players. So Poor Sheep's going to make up for their lack of tiles a little bit heading into the late game, and Andreas is going to be starved for production slots.
Yes, definitely looks like he is. He's not made any use whatsoever of that second headquarter. Literally all that has done in this game is get him reduce his shipping a little bit on this high aluminum tile, and that's it. Really would have liked to see a lot more focus of some of the production buildings out here for AndreasG, be a little bit more resistant to those EMPs. Not huge this game, since it is just EMPs, but sometimes those small things can make a really big difference when you're only 10,000 away from either killing someone or being killed in the late game.
The engineers have advanced our production.
Poor Sheep is the first into, well, maybe the first into, has 2 optimization centers up and running right now. Makes sense because Offworld prices are actually not that good. Chems right now, the only launch that gets you above 25k profits. But that does have a decent price of 511.
Yeah, I'd be very
Offworld.
tempted seeing that to just go ahead, get into an optimization center, to go ahead and optimize chems. You've got the laboratories on the map already. That's going to keep chems kind of okay for profitability, and then you can make that plan to transition into the off-worlds once you've got that chem market under control. It creates an interesting option that isn't open most games, just because you almost never see a resource like that be that profitable off-world. 36k for a pleasure dome.
It's a bit high, especially that Pavlos is already in D debt, now D+1. That stock price is going to fall, and I don't know, I might consider buying into it a little bit while it's cheap if I was one of these other players. Instead, Poor Sheep and Andreas are going to go after each other.
Yeah, a bit of an interesting option there. I'm not sure about it from Poor Sheep's position. I mean, honestly, if I'm Poor Sheep right now, I see AndreasG, and I don't feel like he's gotten that big of an advantage over everybody else this game. It feels like he's kind of stumbled a little bit out of the gate. The dust storms really slowed him down. He wasn't able to use that patent lab super effectively. And now I'm thinking that we're getting into the late game. He's not going to be a huge threat in the late game, even with virtual reality carbon scrubbing thinking machines. I'm not seeing him as a huge threat. Maybe I'm more interested in taking down Pavlos, who has been focused on, he's got nanotech, superconductor, teleportation, and he's expansive, right? So he's cheap to purchase, really nice boost to your stock price. Go ahead and get him taken down. That gives you an expansive subsidiary, and then you're just a lot less threatened in the late game. That's what I might have liked to see from Poor Sheep. We'll see how it works out for him going after AndreasG.
Tinny is moving into the first off-world.
I hate those filthy bandits.
Cost them just a little bit under 90k to actually put up. Unfortunately, well, food is actually finally a decently profitable off-world launch at 40k, as everyone's been killing the price of food on world.
Food and chems both are pretty reasonable for this. I mean, it's going to take about 4 minutes total from the time this started for it to be profitable. It needs to begin launching immediately. But one thing I will say is this game doesn't seem to be coming to a conclusion anytime soon. That's one of the reasons I like going ahead and getting that off-world online. Nobody's been attacking you. It's always really, really nice in a lot of ways when you can get that off-world down before even having to buy up stock to defend yourself. And that's what Tinny has gotten away with this game with this hologram.
Right, and they're able to buy into their stock. They're in a decent debt position, only 77k debt. Things are looking good for Tinny in the long term. Let's see if they can keep that advantage going. Tinny does have a slew of optimizations here and there.
New land is available for auction.
Couple pleasure domes.
Yeah, the one big thing, which I think some of that is just this mutiny right now. I imagine, that's from Tinny. Securing that second pleasure dome. Still reasonable. I mean, the pleasure domes aren't too bad. Power's not out of control, so it's reasonable to do that. The one thing I'm concerned about with Tinny is the complete lack of patents, right? There are some good patents this game. Stinging machines in particular, if you're going to be making this off-world play, can be quite strong. And there were no efforts to get into that whatsoever from Tinny, but other than that, things are looking quite good for him. Also might like to have seen something like moving out of this iron mine that's right next to your base. You can maybe turn that into an off-world or just an optimization center, something like that, and then move into those, connect up those iron tiles just a little bit away and have some adjacency going there. Just small things, but they can matter at the end of the day.
Poor Sheep is hacking carbon.
Price manipulation.
Actually, one more thing I want to comment on for Tinny very quickly is no carbon. That can be a concern in the late game. Tinny doesn't have any carbon production down right now. Electronics are looking kind of reasonable, and potentially could be reasonable if you can get silicon and carbon under control, but Tinny has no carbon and no silicon production whatsoever. That can make production difficult in the late game when we've got these life support resources dropping off the way they are.
Right.
Launch affirmative.
More off-worlds going up. We do have Poor Sheep has had an off-world, and it's been up for a little bit later than Tinny, but it's been on for a while. Andreas has an off-world also hidden over here somewhere. There we go.
It's under that water pump. Yep. Bit of an interesting location for an off-world, but oftentimes people won't look at those basic resources when they're trying to find your off-world. They'll expect it to be in your production buildings somewhere, so it can work out okay. What you need to be careful of with putting it on a resource like that is there are nukes in the game. If somebody feels comfortable throwing a nuke at your goon squad so they can start getting mutinies and EMPs on the off-world, that's when it becomes a bit more of a concern. But this game, that does not seem like that big a deal. Now, one thing I am concerned about is AndreasG has thinking machines and is going into a second off-world away from the headquarters. I really don't like that move at all, especially not as a nomad. You can just get rid of the claim, put it next to his other base for all I care. That base is doing literally nothing at this point.
Well, Andreas has already used up all of the return to claim.
Wow,
So they
that
have
is impressive.
no option to move back to the other headquarters.
I wasn't expecting that. That is impressive. I don't often see players do that. I think that's been a lot of playing around with aluminum this game, maybe trying to move into some carbon as well. We saw a lot of the players skip carbon early, which has to be benefiting Poor Sheep.
Tinny right now is in a very strong position. All their stock secured, 2 off-worlds that are up and launching, decent profits, and 245k in the bank.
Yeah, Tinny's looking to be in a decent spot with those double off-worlds. Poor Sheep and AndreasG still fighting. It's hard to say who has the advantage there. Poor Sheep a little bit more cash, but AndreasG did manage to take one of his off-world markets away from him. And so that's a really big cash swing at this point. You're talking about maybe about 60k in AndreasG pocket that he wasn't expecting, and 60k away from Poor Sheep. It's a 120 swing. Pretty big deal in the late game.
Andreas is the only one who's noticed, at least a little bit ago, that chems were a good launch. Now the best 2 launches are water and chems.
Yeah. Steel's starting to get there too. Very, very different game when it comes to that off-world. Everybody's really focused on that food for so long, and with these dust storms that keep hitting, that's been a bit difficult. I wonder how well everybody has their food upgraded at this point.
Off-world shipment launched.
Wow, Tinny, I was expecting to have more food upgrades. Only has 1 done, another on the way at this point. I do appreciate that this interface got changed up so you can see that more easily now as an observer. And then 2 done for Poor Sheep. Could help him out a bit if he can keep this food online, as long as it's not getting attacked by EMPs and the like.
But Tinny's getting close to being able to buy out somebody. 75% of the way on Pavlos. Was in the lead for getting a buy on Andreas, but Poor Sheep has gone ahead of that. 64% for the buy on Poor Sheep. The question is Tinny, who do you target right now?
Well, I'm just taking down Pavlos every time. If I'm being entirely honest, that's all I care about. I already would have bought all 5 of Pavlos stock, just because the other 2 players are already fighting with each other the entire time. Pavlos, he's an expansive player. He was in D levels of debt. He's still riding that line. Get those bought while you can, because at this point, if I'm Pavlos, likely what I'm looking at doing is trying to get rid of this debt and make it so that I'm not going to get bought. And I really want to get those stocks secured before Pavlos has the opportunity to recover from his low stock price right now.
Right, so Tinny is making a little bit of a mistake there. Pavlos, on the other hand, in a decent position, has plenty of money to pay off that debt. Look at all these farms, all producing triple-digit profits. Does have one off-world, 2 off-worlds, sorry. One of them is buyed out by Andreas, but we have an interesting situation here. Andreas is able to buy out Poor Sheep, but has yet to notice that if they cancel some launches, they have that ability to. Poor Sheep, there we go.
Gone. Poor Sheep started that, might be regretting it at this point. As we can see, neither of them was really in a great position to overwhelm the other anytime soon. And that was really the concern about this initially. Tinny has suddenly decided, all right, no, I'm going to go after AndreasG. I'm not sure I like this move.
No, I would have...
Actually, I'm sure I don't like this move.
I would have preferred definitely to buy into Pavlos. You get the expansive with the extra claims. You get 2 off-worlds, although Tinny doesn't know that themselves.
Launch affirmative.
And,
payout.
but he does know that Pavlos has a decent amount of money, still has a decent amount of money despite paying down all that debt.
Yeah, Pavlos did get that debt paid down. One interesting thing that could happen here, AndreasG is focused on Tinny for the time being. Tinny made the buys first. Pavlos might have an opportunity to sneak in here and get that buy on AndreasG. We can see he is making an awful lot of money right now. Almost has 400,000 in the bank already, and he is going to need exactly 847 at this moment, 847,000 to finish off AndreasG. So he's almost halfway there if he just wanted to commit.
Yeah, this might be one of those games where the 4th place player just sits in the background so long, unnoticed for so long, that eventually they come back and win it.
Yeah,
Pavlos
purchased up his last little bit of stock.
Yep, and that's in anticipation of paying down all this debt with these superconductor, I'm assuming, solar panels. Yes.
Yep, superconductor solar panels for sure for Pavlos.
So that debt's going to disappear. He'll be able to sell some of that stock if he wants to make a quick purchase.
Optimization routine successful.
Let's see. One concern I do have for Pavlos is he's only just recently got this optimization center doing a whole lot. He's only got 4 optimizations so far. I would like to see more of those. Electronics is a good optimization. Chems is a fine optimization. Food is a great optimization in a lot of ways with these off-worlds that you're planning to keep online. Mm-hmm. And it's just a little light on the optimizations. If it weren't for that, I would say he might have had a shot this game. Unfortunately for him, didn't quite work out. I am wondering, Pavlos has the option of buying out Tinny in just a moment. Is he going to go for it? Is he going to wait? I don't do it if I'm him, but is he going to do it?
Well, we don't know if the red buy button has showed up on Pavlos' screen just yet, as they do have a couple money tied up in a couple of launches. Now it has shown up. Okay, they do it.
He does it. Pulled that trigger. I'm not sure about that move, because in particular, my big concern is Poor Sheep as a subsidiary is extremely effective at this point. Now, he's not maybe as good as an expansive would have been, but he's been sitting around for so long. He's making a huge amount of cash. I mean, 400,000 tucked away. That is a lot of money on over to AndreasG, and I find it highly unlikely Pavlos can overwhelm that amount in this long-term game. I really don't know if taking out Tinny was the right move.
Not to mention that you benefit AndreasG. AndreasG does get 4 shares in Tinny, versus if you did wait to buy up Andreas, Tinny would have gotten a lot less shares out of that deal, and you'd have Yes, Pavlos, you'd have a
Launch
lot more shares
affirmative. What a
just
payout.
paying you dividends.
Yeah, and you'd have shares in Poor Sheep at that point. You'd be kind of tied in shares of Poor Sheep on AndreasG with Tinny, but Tinny's been in this kind of weird spot. And I don't know. You'd also have obviously shares in Tinny. Tinny doesn't have any shares
Successful
in
Offworld
you.
shipment. Make room
Oh
for the
boy!
profits.
But it looks like Pavlos is probably going to fall out of this one. I mean, 66 to 27% is just.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very close.
No, that late game stock battles are probably the hardest thing to pick up in Offworld, as AIs, while very good, they don't actually teach you how to play that late game stock battles. So the
No.
only way to do it is to play online with other competent players.
Andreas calls the GG. He knows he's got this wrapped up. Only needs about 40,000 more to get that purchase on Pavlos. And, well, his subsidiary makes that for him in 10 seconds. So we will be done with this game very, very soon.
Mm-hmm. Andreas takes it, earning the Team A, the blue team, 1 point from this bonus match.
Nice work by Andreas to get it done. I was skeptical it was going to happen because of being a nomad, having to push all the way to that late game. AndreasG says he got an achievement, which is interesting. I wonder which one that was that he picked up, but I'll have to give it to him. He got it done. He won the game. Can't take that away from him.
Nope. Those Offworlds doing quite well for Andreas. 873k profit. You can just look at the balance sheet over here really quick. Andreas making good money off of food despite that issues in it early. Good money off of electronics. Some decent money spread out everywhere else.
Unfortunate for Poor Sheep. He got attacked, it looks like, more than anybody else that game. He was spreading it out pretty effectively against Andreas, Tinny, and Pavlos, but got hit a lot. I imagine some of that was the Offworld getting noticed. In particular, that was going to be a concern, and some of it probably was being the first one to pull the trigger and then not being able to actually get it done. And that can definitely be devastating. If you get aggressive first, people notice you get aggressive, but you can't actually get to the purchase. Oftentimes, black market will be so heavy on you that it slows you down enough to not be able to make it there at all.
Right, everybody attacking Poor Sheep the most, including Tinny 6 times, Pavlos 3 times, Andreas 4 times. That makes the most sense. They were in a battle consistently. Some of those attacks didn't quite make sense from our perspective as an observer.
On some of them, I will say, we saw black market raining down pretty much from the start of that game.
Yes.
And so I think it's a lot more reasonable at that point. Lead was kind of shifting and changing who was the biggest threat at any given moment. So I'd say it's probably more reasonable than it looks just at the end screen, because things were in flux for a while that game. We actually saw pretty strong use of the black market early compared to most games. I mean, look at this black market usage. I mean, Pavlos down at 13 because he was in a huge amount of debt a lot of the time, but Poor Sheep with 22 overall, 15 for Andreas, 16. I mean, that's much better than an average game, I would say.
Right. No, very good. Very good from the black market. I do know there were some restrictions for non-veterans cannot play in this bonus game, but everyone here did play quite well.
Yeah. It was good work from people here. It was an interesting little game. It's one of those that, once again, you could probably look at a little bit and be like, was this the right call? Was this better than this other option over here? You know, we talked about going after Pavlos instead of going after AndreasG at some point. Maybe things work out a little better, but
or Poor Sheep going out against Pavlos, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Tinny going after Pavlos.
Yeah, little things like that can make a big difference.
Before Pavlos purchased all of his stock.
Because I think Tinny was pushing like 85, 90% at that point, wasn't he?
Yes, it was getting up there.
Very close.
Then
very close
Tinny
to being able
decided
to
buy done. Into Andreas instead of Pavlos.
Yeah. Definitely an interesting one. Shows how knowing what to do in that stock market can be so important late in the game. I believe that was our one game for the tournament today,
Yes,
correct?
just the one bonus game from the tournament today. The rest of the games will be starting Saturday at 19 GMT on the Stardark channel.